What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Photo Finish, Scot Radio's home for motorsports in general and NASCAR in particular. It is going to be a bit of an IndyCar-themed week on this episode because there's some major comments that came out from some major owners that are kind of rubbing me the wrong way, so we're going to talk about it and discuss it. I'm your host, Ben Schneider, and I do have a guest with me this week. It's not Dylan Burge. Hopefully he'll be back next week to talk about some Formula One stuff. But Chase Draus, for I believe the fourth time this year, welcome to the show.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, you're kind of becoming a semi-regular now at this point.
Yeah, I'm like basically solidified guest at this point. I don't even know.
Yeah.
I mean,
recurring guest, I suppose.
Whatever the term is.
Make sure you listen to Chase's show, The End, on Scot Radio here at 9 o'clock Wednesday nights, correct?
I believe so.
Yep. Yeah.
There's too many shows to keep track of.
Yeah. Well, and we're going into Easter weekend here, so everybody's just ready for a bit of a break.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, like I said, hopefully Dylan will be back next week to talk some F1 stuff. But the 1,000th race in China did happen, so I'll mention it briefly. There's not really much to talk about. Because it was a 2 a.m. start, I'm kind of glad that I didn't stay up to watch the whole thing. I did stay up to watch the start, but I got the sense very quickly that it was just going to be another Mercedes 1-2 and another Lewis Hamilton win, and lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. So,
if you were a betting man, you'd be making a lot of money right now.
Yeah, well, it's not that hard because there's really only 6 drivers that have a shot to win an F1 race with the way the teams are ranked right now.
Just put a couple bucks on each of them and you'll win something.
Yeah, so Lewis Hamilton now 75 wins, Mercedes 130 constructor points to Ferrari 73. By the way, this time last year it was 85-84, so take that with what you will. Their dominance is even greater than it was last year.
Well, let's just hope they're not as dominant as the Lightning when it comes to the playoffs or any sort of finals.
Oh, yeah. Wait. What was that happened?
Basically, Tampa Bay, they had one of the best records in NHL history and got swept. But you're
by the 8th seed, yeah.
Yeah, by the 8th seed. You're not here for NHL. I had to make the comparison, but you know.
Of course, Chase is a big hockey fan. So.
I mean, not even that. It's just like, it just goes to show you when it comes to the end of the season, anything can happen.
Right.
So.
Yeah, big weekend in sports, too, because Tiger Woods won the Masters. But anyway, yeah, Ferrari, what's going on? Because for 5 years I've been hearing this is our year. This is the year we take the fight to Mercedes and break up their dominance, and this is going to be it, the return to glory for the Scuderia. And this year in particular with the young blood and Charles Leclerc coming up, and Sebastian Vettel still that 4-time world champion looking to emulate what his hero Michael Schumacher did in 2000. And yet here we are.
I mean, eventually, you got to back it up, or else it's just going to be boy who cried wolf, and, no one's going to pay attention, because, I mean, it's either, at this point, it's put up or shut up, so.
Yeah, I'm going to be pleasantly surprised if there's some parity here, but it looks like, and again, it is still early, maybe Ferrari brings some upgrades and catch Mercedes, but at this point, despite the fact that Ferrari had a half-second per lap advantage in testing, it is looking like Mercedes are well on their way to making another run at what would be a 6th consecutive World Drivers and World Constructors Championship, but again, we will talk about the Grand Prix as a whole and the season so far with Dylan a little more next week. All right, NASCAR was at Richmond this weekend, and it was the Xfinity Series and Truck Series. And we'll start with the Xfinity Series race. And Chase, I want to ask you, are you familiar with Darrell Waltrip's vortex theory?
I know who Darrell Waltrip is.
Yes. So Darrell Waltrip has this crazy theory that I know has no scientific evidence to back it up, but it's the idea that as rain showers are approaching a racetrack, the winds or air produced by the cars going around the circle will create this supposed vortex that rises up into the air and pushes the storm cell away and keeps it away from the racetrack. And then when the cars stop racing or go under caution or something...
I think that's going to be a fat no from me because my dad has worked NASCAR, and there have been times where there have been torrential downpours to the point where literally there's about 3 inches of water on the track.
Well, I'd like to think he's joking, but then again, it is Darrell Waltrip, so who knows? But I have no other explanation for how this race played out because the entire race, the drivers were being told, okay, the weather's 15 laps away, 20 laps away, 10 minutes away, 5 minutes away, 15 minutes away, and it never came until the race was over and Cole Custer ended up winning. The storm cell would keep moving, and it would dissipate as it got to the racetrack.
I mean,
it held off just long enough.
Even an idiot is right a percentage of the time. Most of the time, it's a small percentage, but I mean, that also might have been the case. And I mean, let's be real. The weather is getting unpredictable everywhere. So, I mean, it's, who knows? He might be right. I mean, I definitely think that's something that they probably should look into. But,
well, who knows? It was a headache for the crew chiefs, I'm sure. All night to be faced with that. But yeah, congratulations to Cole Custer and his team. And again, it looks like he, Christopher Bell, and Tyler Reddick are shaping up for a good championship battle. So some good things going on in the Xfinity Series right now.
I mean, the Xfinity Series is always fun to watch because you got drivers fighting for a spot in the Cup Series. And I find that you actually get a lot better racing that way when people have something to fight for. When you make it at the Cup Series.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
I think the races are also a lot better when the Cup drivers aren't in it.
Yeah.
Because Kyle Busch, with the Dash for Cash program going on right now, the Cup drivers can't run this set of 4 races right now that we're in. So
yeah,
I don't know. I talked enough about Cup leaching before on this show. It's even worse in trucks because aside from Daytona, Kyle Busch has won every race there so far this year. But I digress. We've got a lot to talk about today, so we'll leave that at that for now. Yeah, let's just move on to the Cup Series. So Martin Truex Jr.
Speaking of the devil, finally gets that win.
Yes, finally gets the first short track win. So sorry, Fox and NBC, but you're going to have to come up with something to talk about next time we go to Bristol or Martinsville or Richmond because you can't use the. By the way, did you know Martin Truex Jr. has never won on a short track before?
Just to put this in perspective, I am as casual as the racing fan as they come. Like, I'm just like, you know what, I'll watch it. You know, if the race is pretty good, I'll watch it. If it comes to town, if tickets are right, I'll go. And then even I knew that Truex never got a win at a short track with how much they have just simply talked about it and analyzed it and like, oh, is this going to be the race? Is it going to be this one? Oh, no, he choked. Honestly, it just goes to show. It's a
and to be fair, he did have the most laps led in NASCAR history on short tracks without getting a win, so it was a story, but I don't know that it was a story to the extent that the media was trying to blow it up to be. And the fact that they talked about it so much every time a short track was coming up on the schedule. That's actually the main reason I was rooting for him Saturday night, because I was like, okay, please, if he wins this race, we don't have to hear that anymore.
They'll find a way to bring it up. It's like, oh, did you know Truex has led most laps and then hasn't won a race until very recently? Yeah. I don't know. I've lost.
Say something like it. It took him a while, and now he's starting to win every short track or something. Maybe he'll get a win at Bristol. I mean,
at least he's getting the compliment now, where it's like, now it's just like at least now they're adding the oh God bless your heart, like oh he finally got a win. It's like positive publicity for a change.
Yeah, sure. Also, positive publicity for Joe Gibbs Racing. It was his first win for JGR as well as Cole Pern, and kind of ironic because the last few years have been driving for Furniture Row. Furniture Row had the alliance with Gibbs. So they were basically driving a 5th Joe Gibbs Racing car, and Gibbs was being beaten by their own engines and own equipment. And Joe Gibbs absolutely hated when Martin Truex Jr. and Cole Pern won a race as a driver-crew chief combo. But now that they're on the team, it's he's ecstatic for them.
I mean, it's kind of just the I kind of see it as like the Boston sports philosophy, where it's like, if you're not on our team, we hate you. But the moment you put on that logo, and I mean, it's just like all of a sudden, dude, it's like you've been here for your entire career. We love you. And I mean, I have a feeling that's, a lot of the people at Joe Gibbs Racing, where it's just like, oh my gosh, dude, Truex, honestly, we're getting sick and tired of him. Puts on the jersey. Welcome to the family, brother.
Remember that crazy Indianapolis race in 2017 when Truex and Busch crashed and the pit crews got into a fight? And I think Gibbs lent some pit crew employees out to Furniture Row, and I think they actually suspended them because they were so mad at each other.
It's just... It's fun to see because honestly, rivalry in racing is really what makes the sport great.
Yeah, sure.
Like it definitely adds a whole lot, a whole level of complexity to it. So I mean, I'm kind of sad to see that go in a way, but at the same time, it's just like
I think everybody's sad to see Furniture Row go.
Yeah, I mean,
because of the circumstances, but the Patriots are shutting down, guys, or the Eagles are shutting down the championship teams.
I mean, next thing you know,
surreal. Yeah.
Sad to see it, but at the same time, now they're finally going to be able to get proper equipment and really be able to, really compete. So I mean, it's a sad catch-22, when you look at it. So
yeah. So for me personally, this race wasn't that great. We did see a little bit of a battle at the end. The first half of the race wasn't that good. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. But the second half was all right. We saw Clint Boyer and Joey Logano kind of closing in on Truex, and it was pretty apparent that they had faster cars than the leader. But it's that pesky, dirty air that just gets in the way, and every time a faster car approaches the leader or anybody they're trying to overtake, and this is why it's much harder to work through lap traffic nowadays, they hit that dirty air, it robs them of their momentum. They don't have enough time to make a pass.
I'm going to probably use a term that, I know I've debated you on this in the past. Gentlemen's racing is really what it's coming down to, where it's just like, all right, we want everyone to be official. We don't want, no bumps, no suspension, like no cheating, whatever. But, Dale Earnhardt was one of the most aggressive drivers of all time. Like, you either loved him or hated him. But yet, whenever he raced, people would always tune in. And I think that this whole, gentlemen's racing where it's like, they're not able to make these aggressive moves or, that, oh my gosh moment where it's just like, is he going to be able to pull this off? I think it's, it's hurting the sport because it's just like we're starting to get lower quality races because of it.
Well, and it's not like these guys are driving open wheel cars, where any contact is going to be disastrous. You can bump and bang a little bit. And speaking of, I guess it was kind of ironic that it came down to Logano and Truex at a short track again, and Logano was in second. And this time I think it was a little too far back anyway. He would have really had to send it, and it would have been pretty controversial with how much he would have had to send it in on the final lap. But he didn't put the bumper to Truex, and Truex ended up getting the win. And here's an interesting little tidbit. Truex, of course, drives for Joe Gibbs, Logano for Roger Penske, and those are the only two teams that have won Cup Series races this year, and that streak is still alive.
I mean, I hate to say it's turning into like the best example I can give is, the Warriors Cavs, where it's just like every year it's, eventually someone's going to either break up or burst out. And I feel like, we're just kind of in that, that series.
Well, I mean, it's not that bad yet because it's not every year. It's been every race this year. But and Stewart-Haas has gotten close, but Chevy's got to step their game up. Hendrick, I think, are still behind. Childress have been in a slump for a few years. Rauscher's still behind in the Ford camp.
I mean, there's just got to be that one racer, that one guy who just is able to make all the right moves, who's able to, figure out, just have a good day with a, decent car. I mean, just it takes one car and, one race to really kind of change a whole season for a program. So, I don't know. I think we're kind of in a waiting game right now to really see how it plays out. So
Chase Elliott, maybe Kyle Larson. Although Larson's getting pretty destroyed in the teammate battle this year by Kurt Busch. It's kind of crazy. Kurt Busch goes from team to team, and he just makes every team he goes to better.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of like a freelancer at this point, where it's just like, oh yeah, no, you want me to bring your program up? Yeah, fork over some cash, and I'll bring you a championship.
I get the sense that this is going to be a one and done for him. Yeah, he's getting up there. He's been around a while, and also Ross Chastain. I think I'm a little biased, obviously.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. It's not like he's in the profile picture of the show with me or anything like that. But yeah, no, I think he's ready for better equipment than Premium Motorsports in Cup. So that relationship with Ganassi is still very strong. And if that one car opens up, I don't see anyone else taking it in 2020.
To be very honest, I still think Chase Elliott's going to be one to. I don't think you can sleep on him yet. I still think he's gonna get one race where either he's gonna come in top 5 or he's gonna come really close to winning or win it all.
Well, he was the only driver to win for Hendrick last year, and he won 3 races. So
I mean, it's something you gotta look out for. I'm not promising a win, but I'm saying you gotta watch out because I mean, if you sleep on him, he's gonna definitely make you pay for it.
Yeah, and I'm still not convinced Jimmy's won his last race. I think that team's gonna get a turnaround at some point. All right, so. The IndyCar series, I said, it's going to be a pretty IndyCar-centric show. Got a lot to talk about here, but not much of it, I guess I should say, concerns the actual race weekend because, again, much like Formula One, there's not much to talk about because it was pretty much dominance by one guy, and that guy happens to be my guy, Alexander Rossi, who sat on the pole, led the most laps, and won the race, and didn't just win the race, he won the race by about a 20-second margin of victory or so, which at Long Beach is pretty unheard of.
That's scary how fast he was going and just how he was able 20 seconds. That's just oh my word. That's incredible on his part.
Yeah, well, and it was his second win in a row at Long Beach. He won the race there last year as well. And if you think back to 2017, he was running up front, and that was the day all 4 Andretti cars had some sort of mechanical or engine issue. So I think Long Beach, he's kind of established as, along with Indianapolis, as his best track on the schedule.
I mean, just to put this in perspective, Rossi won by 20 seconds, and this hasn't been seen since 1995. Since
Was that Al Unser?
Yeah, Al Unser Jr.
Right.
When he won by 23 seconds. And it was just, like, really, I'm surprised more people aren't talking about this. Because, like, just to have that level of dominance in a race is unheard of. You would never see that in NASCAR. I think you might see it in Formula One, but I mean,
you've definitely seen it in Formula One.
But I mean, it's just it's incredible.
Yeah, I think Lewis had a margin victory of like a minute at some race in 2008. But yeah, Alexander Rossi is, I think certainly, maybe he and Newgarden, the next American superstars. And it's kind of crazy to think about how just 4 years ago Rossi was still trying to scrap for a Formula One backmarker ride with Manor and Caterham even before that. And IndyCar was an afterthought for him. It was kind of a refugee last resort for him if the F1 dream didn't work out. Of course it didn't because, pay drivers are a thing and Manor was in the red every year. But he came over and, just kind of wins the Indianapolis 500 as a rookie and has really come to love this series, come to be a great ambassador for it. And it's only his 4th season, and I already can't imagine the series without him.
I mean, he's definitely earned his spot, and he's definitely earned his keep. And, I mean, dude, for having this as, like, a safety, I'd say it's a pretty darn good safety. I mean, you literally coming in and, pretty much became a mainstay in the series.
Yeah, he definitely made a whole lot more money in one day winning the 500 than he did his entire F1 career over in Europe.
I mean, in the Indianapolis 500 is a race that's respected all over the world. I mean, to win that is a big deal. So I'd say he's got a bright future ahead of him if he sticks in IndyCar. So
absolutely. Well, speaking of IndyCar and speaking of Andretti, Marco Andretti on the Today Show this morning unveiled his tribute livery that he's going to run the Indy 500, and it pays tribute to his grandfather, of course, the great Mario Andretti. It's been 50 years since his lone Indianapolis 500 win in 1969, so the livery is a tribute to his grandfather, and it might just be the livery that breaks the so-called Andretti curse and gets the Andretti name back in victory lane in Indianapolis as a driver. It's happened, of course, many times with Andretti Autosport, but that Andretti name as a family racing drivers, Mario's win is the only victory for the Andretti family. Of course, Michael never won the race, and Marco came so close as a rookie, but he's never won the race either.
I mean, I'm looking at the car right now that he has, and it is I'd say it's an impressive car.
Yeah, and massive thanks and props to U.S. Concrete, because that's not their normal color scheme, but they're letting them run that beautiful tribute livery in honor of Mario.
I mean, you kind of have to, because, I mean, it's not like, this is what he wants. It's paying tribute to a legend of the sport. So, I mean, I feel like, and they know they're probably going to make a lot more money off of, a car looking that sharp, with the jet, really just sharp red, with the, with their logo like that than, what their colors actually are. So, it's going to be interesting to see what he can do with the car, because, I mean, honestly, I don't see a lot of problems with that one. So I think if he got, if he doesn't wreck and he's able to keep a smart race and not really try anything too risky until he really needs to, I think he has a good shot at winning this year. So
yeah, certainly hope so. It would be a great story to get that Andretti name back in victory lane. But speaking of the Andretti name, I want to shift gears now to Michael Andretti, who of course owns Andretti Autosport and also a couple other high-profile owners. There was a story that came out in IndyStar just today, actually. Michael Andretti stands with Roger Penske and Chip Ganassi. He believes that full-season IndyCar entries, and this is going to be the bulk of our show because we've got a lot to discuss here, and I'm fired up about it because I could not disagree more with these guys. He believes full-season IndyCar entries should be locked in to guaranteed starting positions at the Indianapolis 500 every year.
Yeah, I can see why you're upset. I mean, I do see the benefits because it's, ultimately you're trying to promote a product. So from a business perspective, you want those brands to get in there. However, there have been cases where not making it has really been beneficial. I mean, you were mentioning, his name
Hinchcliffe?
is Hitchcliff.
We'll talk about Hinchcliffe a lot more.
All right, you got a clip?
Yeah. Right now, I just want to play a short clip from a fantastic Outside the Lines documentary on the kart IRL split, which was the last time there were guaranteed spots at Indianapolis. And obviously, we can't play the whole thing for you, but here are some comments.
We don't own it either, so don't.
Right. Here are some comments from some kart owners about the so-called split that happened and how infuriated they were. Here it is.
But the kart divorce became inevitable when George reserved 25 of Indy's 33 slots for IRL car owners, the better to promote his venture.
We're being shut out of Indianapolis. We have 26 or 27 drivers here, and 8 of them would have been allowed to run Indianapolis. What would we do with the other 20 guys? Just send them home?
To me, it's like apple pie and motherhood. It's something you just don't mess with. And frankly, I think he's going to screw it up.
At this particular point, our people want to go to Indy. At the end of the day, we want to go on a level playing field.
That last voice you heard belonged to Roger Penske. That was him in 1996 as a kart owner. And for those of you who don't know, I guess we should explain the split a little bit.
So I can actually take this one. So basically, the 25-8 rule was the form of a provision basically saying that, 25 cars, who basically ran with the series, the IRL series.
Which was the brand new series created by Tony George, who was, at the time was in charge of Indianapolis.
So, and, basically they could have more entries and everything would be guaranteed. And it wouldn't be the typical fastest cars make it. So this was met with a lot of criticism, and they really did not like it. There was no real...
Well, and they shouldn't have. Basically, the 25 IRL teams would have been locked in, and these were brand new. This was the first year the IRL existed as a league. It was Tony George's brand new startup league. So these teams are brand new, very inexperienced. Everybody from drivers to crew chiefs to race strategists to mechanics to everybody. The entire teams. Obviously, they were not going to be as fast as the more experienced kart teams. And kart, of course, was the sanctioning body of IndyCar racing in America for many, many years, was the only sanctioning body, or at least the only one that really had any sort of prestige to it. Those owners, the kart owners, were now being essentially locked out because only 8 of them would have been allowed to qualify for Indianapolis, even though far more would have been fast enough to qualify for Indianapolis. Those spots would have been reserved by the IRL teams. So what did the kart teams do? They went to Michigan International Speedway to create their own 500-mile race, the US 500, which ended up being a total disaster because they had a crash before they even took the green flag and a big delay, and the race was seen as a total farce and only lasted 4 years. And, of course, then kart went out of business as a whole, became Champ Car. That went out of business, merged with IndyCar entirely, and created the IndyCar series we know and love today. And the sport is still trying to recover from the split.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, but I think the one thing is that what really surprised me was Penske's change of heart, where it's like, I think he kind of lost sight of really what it means to be, an independent IndyCar driver.
And if you want to hear more comments from owners like Roger and the other people involved with kart at the time and what they thought of it, and also the other side of the battle with the IRL, that Outside the Lines documentary is called 500 Miles Apart. A very fantastic piece put together by ESPN. Yes, if you can believe it, there was a time where ESPN actually cared a lot about motorsports. But the whole thing is available on YouTube if you have just 45 minutes. I highly, highly recommend it if you want to know more about the split, what led to it actually happening, and the fallout from it. And it'll give you a really good sense of just how bad it was.
I mean, it's very insightful, and I personally recommend it because it also kind of gives you an idea of how the politics of IndyCar racing really is, and how it, it kind of transformed with the split, then the merger, and just.
Well, yeah, and it's just so unprecedented. Like I've tried to come up with an analogy in my head, and I really can't. I mean, maybe it's like Jerry Jones. Like if AT&T Stadium were scheduled to host the Super Bowl, it would be like him trying to lock out the Super Bowl to guarantee that the Cowboys would be in it. I don't know. I don't even think that's accurate. I can't come up with something.
The only thing I can really think about is like the AFL splitting off and trying to do like their own Super Bowl, and then eventually just coming back, to the NFL. It's just like that's the only thing I can really even think that comes close, and even then, it doesn't really do it justice.
Yeah. Well, no comparisons to stick and ball sports really do it justice. If you've heard me ever rant about the playoffs on this show, you know what I'm talking about. So.
Oh, I've been there for a couple of them.
Yes.
I mean, it's.
But yeah, those same owners who were so outraged that they went and created their own 500-mile race. Not even their own 500-mile race, their own 500-mile race on the same exact day at the same exact time, only 250 miles away. These same guys...
I feel like they would have had a little bit more luck if they did it the week after. Or even the week before.
Something different. Those same guys now want to essentially bring the 25-8 rule back, or it would be the 23-10 rule or 22, or however many full-time IndyCar entries there are. They would all be locked in, and all the one-offs would have to fight for the remaining spots.
That's just dangerous. I don't like that because then it minimizes the ability to have new talent brought in. It's going to minimize the opportunity for, not even just the new talent to come in, but the people who, don't have the ability to really go full-time.
Well, let me put it into perspective this way. The Indy 500 is the only major racing event, and when I say major racing event, I'm talking your crown jewel, your Super Bowl of your series. So this would be like your Daytona 500s for NASCAR, your Monaco Grand Prix for Formula One, your 24 Hours of Le Mans for World Endurance Championship and sports car racing, and of course the Indy 500 for IndyCar. It's the only one of those four races where every single one of the participants, it doesn't matter if you've won 5 IndyCar championships, if you're a rookie making your second career start, if you're a 10-year veteran who's produced average results, or if you won the Indy 500 last year. It doesn't care who you are. It requires you to qualify on merit. It is an honor and a privilege just to be there, having enough speed to qualify and stand there in Gasoline Alley on Sunday morning knowing you're going to race in the 500. Yeah. Nobody is locked in. And we've seen big teams get bumped before. It's very rare. Penske got bumped in 95, and they did the honorable thing and just accepted defeat and moved on. Ryan Hunter-Reay for Andretti, I know is your driver, he got bumped from the field in 2011 because Andretti didn't get the setups right. And what did Andretti do? They went to A.J. Ford Racing's second car. They screwed Bruno Junqueira out of an Indy 500 ride, put RHR in the 41 car so he could still participate in the race.
Yeah, no, that one, I don't like to talk about that one.
Well,
I really like Hunter-Reay, so I don't want to.
I mean, I don't blame him as much as I blame Andretti for it.
Oh yeah, no, that he blame him.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm blaming him for that's the thing. That's why I'm not surprised he is coming out on this side of it, because the last time one of his cars got bumped, he bumped his way back in because he has a lot of money and he needed his star driver in the race.
I think also something to really think about is that Hinchcliffe. He didn't.
We'll get to Hinchcliffe eventually.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I keep trying to bring it up because I feel like it's relevant, and I feel like you're just like that's your ace in the hole. You're just.
I'm almost there.
Oh boy.
I want to emphasize. I want to emphasize why this is so important. So, why do you think NASCAR's Daytona 500 qualifying race ratings are down? And their attendance is down too. And I know NASCAR's struggling across the board right now, but it's particularly bad for the twin 150s or the duals or whatever sponsorship they have nowadays. I don't know. I can't keep track. The sponsor seems to change every year. Why do you think it's so bad? It's so bad because of a charter system. The charter system gives 36. So, I mean, this is an even worse ratio. It's 36 full-time teams that have charters. These are the full-time, wealthy teams that don't need them anyway, for the most part at least. They are now locked in to every Cup race every season because they are part of a race team alliance that has the charter, and because they're big names, they're locked in. So if you're a Chase Elliott fan, there's no point in watching the duels because it doesn't matter where Chase Elliott starts in the field. He can work strategy and track position and work through a draft, and he can work his way up to the front eventually. Or he starts on pole, and that's great, but he's not going to stay up there the whole race because of a draft. So, but he's already locked into the race. You know what 90% of the starting lineup is going to look like before qualifying even happens, before the cars even get into the track.
I think the one thing I can say, the one argument where I think they kind of have a little bit of validity, they're trying to get the names out there where it's just like you see them on a daily basis. However, it does affect the long run because eventually it's going to get to the point where you're not getting new talent in.
Yes. And those names are so big anyway that ideally they wouldn't even have to worry about it because they should be fast enough than the smaller teams trying to scrap their way in and give everything they have just to get on the last row of the grid.
Yeah.
But that's, NASCAR's always had provisionals, with the top 35 rule and all that. If it were up to me, Jeff Gordon crashes in qualifying, guess what? Tough luck. You didn't qualify this week. I don't care if you're a 4-time champion, you won 93 races. You did not qualify for this particular race weekend. That's just how it is. And it would be sad, and it would be difficult for Hendrick to accept.
Know why they wouldn't do that? Money.
Exactly.
You got too many fans out there who's supporting him. It's just not going to happen. So I can understand where you're coming from, but
here's that argument. What happens if a big name does get bumped? A big name got bumped last year. Actually, 2 cars got bumped last year. We'll talk a little bit about both of them. But James Hinchcliffe. Maybe you're just tuning into Scot Radio on a Thursday night because you got nothing better to do. Maybe you don't know very much about motorsports at all. But if you have seen a Honda commercial in the last year, I guarantee you will at least recognize James Hinchcliffe. Because he has been in so many Honda commercials, not just for their race cars and their performance cars, but just for their regular road cars. He's Honda's top spokesman and celebrity of the IndyCar series. How do you think Honda felt about him not qualifying for the Indianapolis 500? It was probably very disappointing. Because here's the guy that you promote so much that you have in all your commercials, and he's not even going to be in the biggest race of the year.
They're probably thinking, man, we should have gone with Hunter Ray. But
well,
I can understand that, and that was more of a sadistic joke, so please don't take that as a serious comment. But, I mean, I can understand the frustration because from a business perspective, you're making this investment and it's like, all right, we're choosing a solid driver who we think can make it in there and really do well. And then all of a sudden there's this drop and it's like, what in the world? You know, like, aren't you supposed to be good? Aren't you supposed to be making there? Like, I'm kind of worried.
And Hinchcliffe did do well in 2016 because he won the pole. He's the fastest man of the speedway. And 2 years later, he didn't have enough.
My one concern is that, kind of looking at a business perspective, what are the complications of not even, I agree with what you're saying, like, honestly, the fastest should be there, but, is in the contract where it's like, all right, if you don't make it, you don't get paid, or is there some sort of implication?
I certainly wouldn't know what's in each of these guys' contracts.
So,
probably
I mean,
pages worth of incentives that I don't know about, but
so, I mean,
and it's none of my business, so I don't concern myself with that too much, but.
I mean, that's my one thought, like, that's probably why a lot of these people, these racers, I'm assuming are probably going to be in favor of this because ultimately, if they can get another paycheck and depending on how their contracts worked, yeah, they're not going to be, say no, where it's like, oh yeah, I get to race in the Indy 500, basically because, my boss pretty much has, enough money and, we're going full time. So, I mean, it's a paycheck and, if I win, even bigger paycheck.
Well, but here's the thing. Was Honda so disgusted with Hinchcliffe that they dropped him from all the commercials and everything? Was Schmidt-Peterson so devastated by this crushing defeat that they had to shut the team down because Aero Electronics, their sponsor, backed out? No. In fact, just the opposite, because Aero Electronics, their sponsor, not only came back to support James Hinchcliffe this year, they doubled down on their investment because they are now also sponsoring Hinchcliffe's SPM teammate, Marcus Ericsson. And guess what? Lord willing, if Robert Wickens is eventually healthy enough to walk again and, Lord willing, even drive a race car again, and they can get that third car back up for him, guess what? They're going to sponsor his car too. So they have tripled down into their investment into the team just a year after they didn't even qualify for the race.
And so far, it looks like it's paying off.
Yep.
So, I mean...
So this argument that, well, sponsors aren't going to be happy, we could lose them. Hinchcliffe didn't lose his last year, so I'm just saying. And I know that it wouldn't be a guarantee, but...
I think it's going to be one of those things where it's like, it could have just been an anomaly, but ultimately right now, this is the only thing we have, so that's ultimately what we have to say is, probably what's going to happen. And I mean, I don't think they're going to say no to this because ultimately it's exposure for them because honestly it's a lot of TV time. It's like, covering like, oh yeah, look at this car, like what, what's going on with Hinchcliffe, and obviously they're going to be interviewing a lot and guess what's going to be on his, guess what he's going to be wearing? Logo.
Exactly. And that's the thing. If Hinchcliffe had been a mile an hour or 2 miles an hour faster so that he could qualify and get on the last row of the grid, he would have been in the race, but he might have gotten a brief mention here and there, just the announcer saying, well, it's been a tough month of May for James Hinchcliffe and Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports, but that would be it. They'd be focused on all the major stories, such as who was favored to win the race, who ends up winning the race. But because Hinchcliffe failed to qualify entirely, he gets out of his car, and before he can even get out of his car on pit road, after failing to qualify, the media are surrounding him. And
Like the
they
pack
they
of
want to
hungry
know
hyenas
exactly
they are.
what went wrong, and tell us, and how could this have happened to your team? And through all of that exposure, through all of that media attention, Aero Electronics and Honda and Schmidt-Peterson were getting so much more TV time than they would have had they been so mediocre during the month of May and qualified for the race but not gotten a mention at all, hardly.
It's a dangerous game coming with advertisement, especially in a world so uncertain as NASCAR and IndyCar and just auto racing in general. But I think it worked out in their favor in this case. So I mean, ultimately, I think they need to keep the system the way it is, because if they change it, there are so many potential downfalls to that system that, yeah, your sponsors might be getting a lot of money, but they could be making more money. You're going to potentially lose out on a whole bunch of new talent that could essentially bring you in more money. And not even to mention the fact that you're going to get more entertaining racing and better quality racing. And I don't know anyone who's going to complain about that one.
I think the Indy 500 has nothing to gain and everything to lose by putting secured spots and guaranteed spots in for the full-time entries.
I mean, I feel like they got a little bit more to gain if they actually have more competitive racing, and that's what you're going to get if you have, the best of the best.
Yeah.
But I mean,
exactly.
especially
And
on a track like that, like the Indy 500 is one of the most historical tracks of all time.
Right.
Like, it's on my bucket list to actually go and watch a race there because it's just so legendary. But
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah. Well, and for the record, I do want to mention Pippa Mann was the other driver who got bumped last year, and her Dale Coyne Racing team really, Hinchcliffe's was at least close to qualifying. Pippa Mann's team, they really didn't get the numbers right all month and didn't really come close. But that being said, guess what? Pippa Mann is back on the Indy 500 entry list this year, not with Dale Coyne Racing, but it's actually even a little bit better. It's with a brand new team that comes from the USAC world called Clausen Marshall Racing, and she has the same sponsor she had last year, which is Donate Life, and it's an organ donation foundation to honor Brian Clausen, for whom the team's named, and he unfortunately lost his life in a sprint car crash in 2016, and he was an organ donor and a good friend of Pippa Mann's.
hearing all the stories afterwards about how so many lives were affected because, they're able to get his organs, it's really inspiring. So to see that legacy continue, honestly, I mean, they got me rooting for him. So,
yeah. So she's doing all right, and she's bringing a brand new team, which I think is great for the series and great for the sport.
especially if they're able to get a win and really establish themselves.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. A win would be a tough ask for a brand new team, but hey, it's Indianapolis. Anything can happen, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah, we'll see. I do also want to briefly mention, this point occurred to me actually very quickly before we even went on the air. But the Indy 500 does offer double points now. And what I mean by that is the point values are double what they normally are for an average race such as Long Beach this weekend. And that's the case for the Indy 500 AMA Championship at Sonoma. So, of all the gimmicks in the world, I can think of far worse ones. I'm looking at you, Formula E, with your fan boosted in attack mode.
If I had a mic,
real
I
life
would
Mario
drop
Kart
it,
over
but
there. But yeah,
I think
it is a gimmick that I don't think is necessary. But here's what it does. It also
it adds tension. It adds a lot of
it makes the race more valuable if you miss it, because that's the other thing. With Hinchcliffe not qualifying for the race last year, not only is he missing Indy 500, he's essentially missing 2 races worth of points to go for. So from a championship perspective, obviously when you're in the month of May, you're really just focused on the 500. But from a championship perspective, it's a big deal to lose out on the opportunity to score that many points.
I think it's a gimmick that can really help because, I mean, if you look at it, when it comes to double points, drivers are going to be a lot more risk. They're going to take a lot more risk because ultimately it could potentially take a lot more reward. They're going to either, you're going to see a lot more smarter racing trying to, make sure that they can strategically get those points. And I think you're just going to see a lot of hard-nosed racing where it's just like, yeah, you know what, if I'm going to go for it, I might as well go for it. That's, from a casual fan's perspective, I know there's probably, some angry guy, tweeting you out right now, but,
No, the casual fans like the playoffs, supposedly. I'm told by the higher-ups in NASCAR, but I don't know.
Nah.
I never...
You kidding me?
Yeah,
if you're going to do the playoffs, you got to do, the March Madness brackets. Even then, it's just then essentially it just throws out the whole importance of the season where it's just Yeah, just make the entire series like that. Just essentially get like 500 cars on the track at once, and cut it down to 250. Then cut it
they
down.
Definitely have the money for that. 500 cars.
Dude,
they can barely fill a field of 40 cars right now.
I mean, I'm sorry. I would find it very entertaining to watch 500 cars raced on a half-mile track. I think that would be impossible, but it would be funny to watch. Just the utter chaos it would be. I mean,
500 cars in Martinsville. Wow, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. No, this is the part of the show where I make Ben, throw a table. Just there always has to be one moment.
You're
where...
doing it. I thank you for coming on tonight because I don't like doing the show alone. It is much nicer to have somebody to actually talk to. So on that note, I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to mention briefly? Since you're my guest, so I'll let you bring up a subject if you want.
Yeah, I think right now, honestly, looking at the standings right now for NASCAR, I think it's going to be close between Logano and Busch. It's gonna be a slugfest, and I love watching slugfest racing where it's just like two guys going back and forth the entire time, where it's like, who's gonna get this one? Now who's gonna get this one? And I think probably my way too far, underdog is probably gonna be Joey Gase. Honestly, I grew up watching him, and I'm like, you know what? He's due for a break. It's gonna happen. Not anytime soon, but I believe it's gonna happen at some point.
He hasn't even run the full season, has he?
I know, that's why I'm saying it. Just one race.
Oh yeah, he was one of only two drivers who didn't qualify for Daytona, actually. So.
It's gonna happen. All right, he got knocked down, but if I know my boy Gase, it's gonna come back swinging.
Let's see. He actually got his best finish of the season this year at Richmond.
See, up.
33rd.
Going on the upside.
33rd. Well, yeah, I mean, and I'm not knocking Joey Gase at all here. He's driving for a very underfunded team, and they're doing what they can. But
yeah. Hey,
who's your more serious prediction?
My more serious prediction, I think it's probably.
I know you said Logano's going to repeat. Do you still feel that way?
I still feel that, but I think the one person that might make me change my mind is Truex.
Truex, really?
I think.
Yeah.
Honestly, with the performance he had, it's making me reconsider. So I think if he's able to continue this momentum, I think he's going to be able to really, cause an upset.
Well, I'm sure it's going to take some time to get used to being on a new team, even though you have the same manufacturer and equipment in many respects. It is a bit of an adjustment. So we'll see. Maybe he turns it on the second half of the year.
Love to see it happen.
Yeah. You never know with this format. All you have to do is make it to Homestead, and
yeah.
you too can be a Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series champion.
Hey, I mean, I'm sorry, Sprint still sounds so much better. Or it's just like, Sprint Cup champion.
I guess we can talk about this a little bit. This is Monster's last year?
Yep, and who's going to be the new sponsor?
Probably not going to be one. It's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be the NASCAR Premier Series or Cup Series or what, but there were rumors actually that, and I don't even know, I think Adam Stern tweeted them out, so he usually doesn't tweet out rumors. He tweets out real news.
Oh boy!
But he, I think Monster made a pretty sizable offer to extend the contract by 1 year, and NASCAR said actually we have our model that we want to go with, and we're going to promote our brands a different way. So they turned it down. As far as I know, Xfinity and the Gander Outdoor Truck Series will still have normal sponsorships like that.
That was a foolish move on their part, I think, because Monster Energy, really how I've kind of seen the whole Monster brand, they're trying to get into extreme sports, sports that, really aren't the norm, but, are really trying to, grow out. I mean, you see them a lot with snowboarding, skateboarding, a lot of, these extreme sports, and rally cars. That's another big one. But if the Monster is saying, hey, we believe in your product, and they just say no, then it's a little concerning. So, I mean, depending on how the model plays out, I don't know what the model is, so I really can't say accurately, but, it could either be really good that NASCAR did this or really bad.
Yeah,
Still don't know yet.
Real quick before we shut down for tonight, I do want to say quickly, since I brought Formula E up very, very briefly, there was an E-Prix in Rome this weekend, so congratulations to Mitch Evans and Jaguar. 7 teams and 7 different drivers, 7 drivers for 7 different teams, I should say, have won 7 races this year. So if nothing else, there's at least a lot of parity in Formula E. Still a lot of gimmicks I don't know how I feel about, but the series has a lot of potential. And I went to New York in 2017, and the atmosphere was, no pun intended, electric, you could say.
I had to. I'm sorry. That was too good.
That's all right. But yeah, it is a very intriguing series to watch. I wish they would dump. I mean, fan booths is worse than the playoffs in many respects, because the fans literally are giving extra power to the drivers and having a direct say in the race, and I just something about that I don't like.
You're gonna see a lot of bot accounts come up on Twitter just boosting those people, but
yeah.
Either way, so
yeah. Well, I mean this also goes with, I know you've advocated for a street race. Like if Formula E can get races in Rome and New York and Hong Kong and Monaco every other year, why can't NASCAR get New York? Why can't F1 get the Miami race that they've been trying so hard to get for the last couple of years?
I advocate for this on every show because I really want to see it happen. You know what? Heck, do one in Boston, because ultimately I feel like, with how
you were this close with IndyCar.
Yeah,
and it just completely fell through.
I mean, you could easily go. You know what? Go through the North Shore, go through Boston, and then go end on the South Shore, because ultimately that it would bring so much recognition to the sport, especially in Boston, because they make a tradition out of this. Guess what, Bostonians? Any excuse to go out in the street and get drunk, they will be all for it. I'm sorry, like, dude, literally, St. Patrick's Parade. Conor McGregor came through and he's like, "Dang. In Ireland, we only celebrate St. Patrick's Day once. You guys do it for a whole effing month or a whole effing week. I gotta bring this back to Ireland." And I'm like, well, the man, the myth, the Conor McGregor had spoken. I mean, but I do think that if they were able to, do a race in a big city, even if it was like, Chicago, New York, even Minneapolis, in Minnesota, a big city race like that would bring in a lot of money. So,
yeah, I definitely
and there's my soapbox rant for the night.
That's all right. Well, we're gonna wrap it up now for this week's edition of the Photo Finish. Next week, again, hopefully Dylan will be back on. We can talk a little bit more about the 1000th Grand Prix in China, a little more in depth. But there's not much else happening next weekend, so I think it'll be an interesting show. We can have some time to go into some more off-topic stuff, maybe talk about the seasons as a whole, do some recaps or any other news that breaks. But because it is Easter weekend, NASCAR traditionally has this weekend off. IndyCar's getting ready for the month of May with the Grand Prix of Indianapolis and, of course, the Indy 500. And F1, of course, very rarely races on back-to-back weekends. So,
yeah, well,
everybody gets some downtime this week, which I think is good. It was a busy week last week, so.
Yeah, you kidding me? I was getting tired just keeping up with all of them. Just all of a sudden, NASCAR, Formula One, Formula E, IndyCar. Next thing you know, it's gonna be
IMSA was at Long Beach too. I know we didn't really talk about that. Well, Chase, thank you again for coming on.
No problem. Always a pleasure.
Yeah,
always a pleasure.
Yeah. So for Chase Draus, Dylan Burge, Matt Cole, everybody else who's been on the show so far this year, I'm Ben Schneider, and we will see you on the next episode.